We're super excited to have everybody here today and also have our guests online. Thank you for joining us. We're really happy and pleased to be able to show you our latest version of WebDocs, WebDocs 7. For some of you are WebDocs users already. You're going to see what some of the new enhancements are, some of the new feature functionality. You all have a booklet there of the release notes in front of you. We're going to follow that a little bit. We also are doing a simulcast, so hello to all the folks online. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us this morning. We are recording this, knock on wood, hopefully it works right, and we will make the recording link available to all of you after the seminar. So if you want to review something that you saw today, or you want to share it with somebody that you think might have an interest, or somebody that couldn't make it today, got stuck in traffic or whatever, you'll be able to do that. My name is Bill Sweezy. I am President and CEO of Data Management International, and I'm going to be taking you through a little bit of an introduction. Then I'm going to turn it over to Matt Johns, who is our product specialist, who is going to take you through the new version, version 7 of WebDocs, some of the new feature functionality in there. Then I'll come back. We'll take a little break about halfway through, let you refill your coffee, use the men's room, the ladies' room, and we'll come back, and then we'll talk about the rollout for V7, how that works, and we've got some special promotions around version 7 that you will definitely want to know about. So for those of you who are already WebDocs customers, you understand all about document management and the benefits of that, scanning your documents and having them instantly available, that kind of thing. For those of you who have not experienced the nirvana of electronic document management yet, I always like to do a little bit of a recap. Why do we need document management, and what is it good for, and why do we want to do it? Well, I think we all know that managing documents in paper format is very inefficient. Paper documents are insecure. They're at risk of theft. They're at risk from natural disaster, fire, flood, that kind of thing. It's very cumbersome to work with paper documents, and I think we all know that. It's expensive, and what do I mean by expensive? Well, we're going to see on the next slide some statistics about the cost of managing your documents in paper. And of course, paper is very big, it's bulky, it's very space intensive. And we've been saying for a decade now there must be a better way. And there is a better way, and we're going to show you that today. But let's look at some of the statistics about the cost of managing paper. And these are pretty well-known numbers. We didn't come up with these numbers. These were generated, by studies, folks like, Gartner and IDC and, Arthur Anderson, people who study this kind of stuff. So, you can kind of read these on your own here, but a typical office worker uses 2 cases of paper a year, $80. But the paper is only about 10, 11% of the cost of managing paper, making the per employee cost $800 a year. This is if you're not using an electronic document management system. This is what it's costing you now. But the problem is it's hidden cost. Nobody sees it because you're not writing a check. It's just embedded in it costing your operation. Typical cost to file a document, $20. Cost to search for a misfiled document, $120. And you can see the rest of these. The average cost, I love this one, the average cost to maintain a filing cabinet, a paper filing cabinet, $1,500 to $4,000 a year. That's the labor to file stuff, refile stuff, the space it takes up in rent, the little hanging folders and making the tabs and the Pendaflex and all that stuff goes into that. What I want you to think about is in your organization, when you go back or when you get off the webinar, walk around and look at all the filing cabinets there are and pick a number, $2,000, $3,000, okay, count them up and figure out how much you're spending a year by managing your documents in paper, and you'll probably be pretty astounded. This is why there's a document management imperative. Now, for those of you who don't know, WebDocs is a cloud-based system. It's always been cloud. It always will be cloud. It was designed from the very beginning, version 1, to be a cloud-based system that works through a browser. Why are we so big on the cloud? Well, 10 years ago when we started selling WebDocs, we didn't even call it cloud, right? We call it web-based or browser-based or ASP or whatever. The consultants have to keep coming up with new names for stuff, right, so they can sell their consulting services. But our model has never changed. It's always been cloud. It's always been through a browser. And Why are we so big on the cloud? Well, I think at this point, everybody at least has heard of the cloud, iCloud, and Google Docs is a cloud application, etc. There's a lot of benefits to a cloud model that you don't get with the traditional software model. That traditional model, I mean, is, you buy the server, you buy the database, you buy the storage, you buy the software, you install it, and deploy it out to the desktops. That's an old model. That model is going away, has been for some time, and is accelerating. So what are some of the benefits of the cloud model? Well, first of all, very quick deployment. If you are not a WebDocs customer yet, or if you are, you might remember the rollout was very fast. We don't have to install anything. We're not rolling in hardware, etc., trying to integrate it into your computing environment or infrastructure. Most customers are up and running in a couple days. WebDocs is very affordable, and we'll talk about the cost model here in a little bit towards the end of the session, but much more affordable than it would be if you were to buy all the hardware and software, etc., yourself, the storage. Requires no hardware or software purchase. That's the point of the cloud. Probably have everything you need already to use WebDocs. If you've got a device with a web browser and an internet connection, you're ready. Some people want to buy a scanner to make it easy to scan new documents into WebDocs. That's fine. A lot of customers use their MFPs, so they can walk up to their Ricoh, Xerox, HP, etc., copier that's in the hallway, and they can scan documents into WebDocs using that. So nothing to buy. Zero impact on your IT infrastructure. So we're not sitting on your servers. We're not impacting your database. We're not impacting your backup windows, etc. So we're very touchless application. I skipped infinite. I love this one. Infinitely scalable. So if you are an organization that's growing very rapidly, or let's say you're in an acquisition mode and you're acquiring other smaller companies and you want to roll them into the system, you don't have to purchase a bunch of software licenses. You don't have to call us. If you need to add a new department or a division onto the system, you log on, you go into the admin module, you just add them as users. That's it. And instantly they're on the system. I mean, it's that easy. So when we say on demand, we really mean you want to add 100 users tonight, knock yourself out. You want to add 1,000 users tomorrow, we can help you with that. You can give us a file. We can go ahead and add them, and boom, they're all on the system. This is a nice one, too. Anybody that's ever gone through an upgrade of a major system, like an HR package or an accounting package, can be very painful. Breaks and connections don't work, and it's 2 months, 3 months doing the upgrade. We push out very small upgrades frequently that are totally non-disruptive to the users and to the environment, which is a great benefit of the cloud model. Cloud is very redundant, high availability, high uptime. We actually guarantee 99.999% uptime in the IT industry. That's called 5 nines, kind of like the gold standard. 5 nines gives you about 5 minutes of unplanned downtime a year. The system, I mean, we've got some users and it's always on, right? I hope you say that. Right? Nod, just nod. Yeah. We very rarely have an issue with access to WebDocs. The system is designed from the ground up to be highly scalable and fault tolerant. For your private sector folks, okay, we get to shift the cost of our document management system from a capital expense to an operating expense. Gives you some tax advantages. You're paying for WebDocs monthly, and again, we'll get into this a little bit later, like a service, like your electric utility, or like your water bill, or like your cell phone bill. That's a cost of doing business, and Uncle Sam is going to go ahead and let you deduct that right off your earnings. Access from anywhere on any device. This is getting more and more important to our customers. So, I mean, everybody has one of these, right? Well, maybe not a BlackBerry, but I'm a holdout. I'm like the 1% is left. But we've all got smartphones nowadays. It's a mobile world. You're okay. All right. Well, that's all right. Well, you know what? Talk to your boss and say, look, the new version of WebDocs lets me access anything on my smartphone. We're fully mobile ready, and if you've got a device, no matter where you are, that can connect to the internet and it has a browser, you have all your documents with you. You're carrying them around. I mean, it really is a new way of thinking and doing things. We don't all have to go into the office anymore. we've got a connection right here. When you've got a system like WebDocs, you've got access to the documents you need to do your job, answer questions, process work. As a matter of fact, Matt is going to show you some examples. We're going to take a little break about halfway through. After the break, we're going to do some workflow. Matt's going to show some workflow examples where we can go ahead and actually process work right on a mobile device. So that means that you can be sent something that you have to do a process or operate on, and you can, right on your mobile device, go ahead, review it, approve it, whatever. And then finally, you know, for the business managers and CFOs in the room, predictable cost. Because this is a subscription model, you know exactly month to month what your cost is going to be. So from a business standpoint, cloud is a great model. You don't have to worry about servers blowing up or your backups failing or whatever. All those unpredictable things that can happen when you have to run and manage the hardware yourself. That's our job. So our solution is called WebDocs. And for those of you who are current customers, we thank you very much. For those of you who are looking for a solution, we'd love for you to take a good look at the WebDocs system. And what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Matt, who is going to talk about some of the enhancements that you can expect in WebDocs version 7. He's going to go through a couple. He's going to go through some things. Then he'll actually jump over. We're going to show you live the new version. So I'm going to hand it over to Matt here. I'm going to give you the little dongle here.
Thanks, Bill. The first thing you need before all the bells and whistles, some of you use WebDocs, some of you don't, is what we really focused on with WebDocs 7 is speed and stability. Yeah, we added some new features that were great, but first and foremost with any doc management system, you need speed and stability. So that's really what we focus on with WebDocs 7. I'll give you some examples here. So in the past, in our testing, we did a lot of testing in the past, but it was with smaller kind of data or environments. With WebDocs 7, we've upped that testing to, here's an example of an environment we tested on, somebody with 250 users, 500 projects, tens of thousands of documents, files, and workflows. You folks probably don't have, near this type of system, but this is what we test on to make sure that that WebDocs can handle that processing of those documents and login time, speed, handle all that with this type of environment. The other thing we did that I didn't mention here is we went from a 32-bit application to a 64-bit application at the data center. I'm not an IT guy. I don't exactly know what all of that means, but I do know it means increased speed and stability. So just to give you a few numbers on speed for those of you that use WebDocs, for those of you that don't, these won't mean much to you till I show you, but you'll have a fresh start of WebDocs 7 with the latest and greatest. So opening the web viewer to view documents is 36% faster. When you log in, 85% faster. So some of the organizations that use WebDocs had a lot of users. When you get to those high numbers of users in broadband, it can decrease login time. And with that 64-bit application, now we're 85% faster. So, we're talking very small numbers. We're talking 2 seconds to 2 seconds. But at the same time, it's a nice increase. 87% faster when you load your assignments. So when you get stuff passed to you through workflow and you go look at your assignments page, that page now pulls up 87% faster. When you do searching for documents, if you have a search result that brings back thousands and thousands of documents, that could take some time to load. Well, it's 92% faster now to do that. So again, a lot of these numbers, until you see it, may not mean a whole lot to you, but it is a much, much faster version of WebDocs. So just to give you an idea, I know some of these may be hard to see for those of you in the back, but we're positive percentage increase on everything as far as speed inside of WebDocs. So we go from anywhere between 92% faster for that login page to the web viewer loading at 16% faster. So if you can read that, you can see all the percentages of how our processes in WebDocs have all increased. The interface in the web viewer. So this is where we get into the neat stuff. What's changed in WebDocs 7 from the version that some of you folks are on right now, or for the folks on the phone that are seeing this for the first time? WebDocs has a little different look and feel as far as the interface goes. I'll walk you through some of the changes, but I do want to touch on just a few PowerPoints here to give you an idea. So as you can see, this is WebDocs version 6, which I assume looks familiar to maybe you folks out here that they currently use WebDocs. So In the past, our interface was very icon and text-based. You had a lot of icons floating around. You'll see on the left-hand side, you had your icons. You also had, the text-based. It was just a fairly busy-looking screen. Well, the whole focus of WebDocs 7 was to make it a more engaging experience for the end user. So what does that look like now? Obviously, a different color scheme that you can see here now, but we've categorized all those icons. Instead of having those 50 floating icons at the top, now we've condensed that into a select few options that have drop-down menus that just free up more space on your screen, make it a more user-friendly experience. Let's just do a little contrast and comparison here. Old version, new version. Old, new. A or B? I feel like I'm an eye doctor, yeah. So a much more engaging interface for the end user in WebDocs 7. The other thing that we were asked for all the time in WebDocs version 6 was to be able to edit grids. I know this is a pretty colorful screen and you probably can't make out any of this, but when you do your search results and bring back your documents, everybody would always write in and say, you know what, we want to change stuff on the fly. I want to be able to edit these grids or move them around and have WebDocs remember next time I log in, what's important to me on my search screen. So I'll show you that real life here, but I do want to touch on that there are editable grids, search results grids now. You can also, in WebDocs 7, search in your assignments page. And I don't know, do any of you I know you guys don't use workflow. Do you guys use the WebDocs workflow piece, or is it view retrieve for the most part? Okay. So for those of you on the phone or for those of you folks here in the room, one of the strongest features of WebDocs is our workflow utility. If you don't have workflow, for folks that you would be looking to purchase WebDocs, but you might as well get workflow right off the bat. It's really going to streamline your processes. I'll show you some workflows. It's a very intuitive. You can create your own workflows, but it's just going to streamline a lot of those processes in AP, HR that you have just to eliminate that walking from desk to desk or manually emailing documents out. Let me hop into the live action here and show you a little bit of the changes we got going on in WebDocs 7. Let me back out of my PowerPoints here. And I'm going to launch these WebDocs. So the first change you're going to notice is the splash screen or the login screen. More simplistic, larger icons, just a more engaging experience to log in now. Again, you'll notice the color scheme is different. I just want to walk down a few of the options on the left-hand side. So again, it's very icon-based, no more text. And we'll start up here. This icon here is the workspace. So this should not be, a lot of people don't use a workspace, and I want to emphasize it can be a very useful place for the end user to go. So the workspace is a customizable dashboard for each end user to make their own. It's meant to make the end user one click away from wherever they need to be inside of these WebDocs. So I want to eliminate having to choose any of these icons over here, and I want to put all of that functionality on my workspace. Now, we can't put every piece of functionality on the workspace, but we can put a lot of it on this workspace. So what the workspace is, it's full of widgets. These are widgets. I can move these around. I can change the color schemes. It's just a customizable place for me to be one click away from wherever I need to be. So I can quickly access the projects in WebDocs that I have. I can access stuff that's on my clipboard. And I'll talk about the clipboard for you folks that are not familiar with the clipboard. Access some recent files that I've been inside now. I can close these. I can clean up my dashboard. I can add different widgets to my dashboard. I can also suggest a widget. So you'll see that link down there. It emails the team, and you can say, you know what, build me a widget. I want to see all my assignments that are 5 days old, that have an amount of $5,000 or more. We can get very creative on the different types of widgets that we can build, and we can place those on each end user's dashboard, again, to make them one click away from wherever they need to be. One widget that I always just like to touch on because it's probably the most frequently used is this visual assignment. So I talk about workflow and how imperative it is to have workflow inside of these WebDocs. If stuff gets passed to me through the WebDocs workflow, I can have those show up on what we call the visual assignments widget. So in the past, in WebDocs 6, I would have to go over here to my assignments icon, and I can view everything that's been passed to me, and I can pass them along that way. But with this visual assignments widget now, I can quickly see the documents that I have passed to me, and it's a little laggy there, but I can approve those right from this widget. I don't have to launch the viewer or open those up. Right from my visual assignments widget, I can quickly pass those along. I briefly talked about the assignments icon here, but as I get invoices or HR files or whatever type of document passed to me through WebDocs, it shows up on my assignments. You'll notice one small change is we have dropout menus now. So in the past in WebDocs 6, if I were to hit my assignment screen, we wouldn't see this. But this allows me to quickly go to the workflows that I need inside of WebDocs to see what assignments I have that's been passed to me. So in this case, if I wanted to view this document passed along the workflow, I could hit my view document here, or I can select it, and it gives me my workflow options here. So in the past, for those of you that had WebDocs 6, you'll remember if you were to select an assignment, you would have a box appear here that gave you your assignments. That's no more. It's now up top. Let's get into some of the search functionality itself is the same as far as how you're going to search and retrieve your documents. The thing that's different that I want to talk on is the editable grids. So if I do a search here, and I'm just going to do what we call a wildcard search and bring back all my HR employees files. Notice here I've got a handful of files, but if I wanted to move these around, maybe employee ID is not important to me. I don't want to see that first and foremost. I'm just going to move that behind, we'll say, social security number. And WebDocs is going to remember next time I log in that this is the order I want to see these in. Now let's say real life scenario here, we had an organization come to us that said, I need to change the position of 25 of my employees. Well, in the past, how would you do that? You'd have to open up each file, go into the file details, change their position name, save, close out. If I want to change now all these to a sales manager, I can quickly do that right from this grid. And when I click off of it, it's going to prompt me to save it. So if I click off of it now, notice I can discard that change or I can save that change. And I can quickly go through as I tab through these and just change these and save my changes. So it may seem like a small change, but something that was really asked of us at WebDocs to do, and so we've done that. So I talked about adding a few features to WebDocs 7. It wasn't like past versions where we released all kinds of bells and whistles. We really focused on speed, stability, and we picked and choose the pieces that we really need to change that users have been asking us for that really makes life easier inside of WebDocs. The other big change to WebDocs 7 over 6 is the indexing queue. So if you're not familiar with WebDocs, the indexing queue is a holding spot to hold documents to file away at a later time. So I always use the automotive industry as an example. I work with some auto dealerships where they've got mechanics out, making repairs on cars all day. Well, at the end of the day, we just want those mechanics to walk up to the scanner, hit the scan button, and get back to work. We don't want them in WebDocs trying to file those repair orders away. So what we do is we spit everything to what we call this indexing queue where, God bless, Susan in the morning has to log in and go file away all those repair orders. But Susan knows what she's doing inside of WebDocs, so she can open these up, file them away where they need to be. We don't want those mechanics out there trying to file away their repair order. So it's a holding spot. Once documents hit this indexing queue, they get OCR'd, and they match any templates if there's templates set up. So I may not have to touch the documents in my indexing queue. They may get filed away automatically if WebDocs recognizes that, okay, this is an invoice from ABC company. I've seen this before. Let's grab the piece of information and file that away. Now, on that point, this is a new feature of WebDocs as well. We now have a quality control tab. So in the past, in the indexing queue, yes, it would match a template. You can manually index those, file them away. But we were asked a lot, I still want that one more step to make sure that Susan's filing these away properly. So once I can select an option to have all these documents in WebDocs, once I file them, to go to this quality control where somebody else can go double check that the documents were properly indexed. And they can do it right from the grids here to make sure that all this information was filled out. In this case, I know that, Bill or Susan didn't put in a vendor, so I can quickly go change the vendor if I wanted to and make that change and file that away. The other really neat feature of WebDocs 7 in the indexing queue is In the past, you'll notice if I click on one of these documents, you're going to see down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's actually this is a 3-page document. Well, what you'd have to do in the past inside of WebDocs, if I accidentally scanned in a multi-page document, I couldn't break those pages out in the indexing queue. I had to delete it out of the indexing queue, go back to my scanner and say, single page, scan single page images into the indexing queue. Well, now in the indexing queue, if I've got a 3-page document and I want to split those apart, I can just click on whatever document it is I want to make a new file with and just drag that here. And it automatically splits that file apart for me. Same thing with if it goes the other way around, you accidentally scan in single-page TIFFs and you say, oh, you know what, I want to make that a multi-page TIFF. I can select the document here, and I can add pages to that document to make it a multi-page document. Something that was requested of WebDocs and something that we put in WebDocs 7, and it's really been a huge success thus far. So the indexing queue, for those of you who are familiar with WebDocs, got a very different look and feel. For those of you that are not, for those of you that are on the phone that are not, you'd experience the best and brightest right away. The clipboard. This has not changed as far as the functionality, but I do like to touch on this to get you familiar with what the clipboard is. If you're not using it, the clipboard is a spot to pass documents between WebDocs found users. So if I put on my clipboard, the Matt John, I'll go grab the Matt John's HR file, put it on my clipboard, and shout down the hall to Bill, hey, Bill, go check out your clipboard. I put Matt's file on it. I want you to review his, his whatever it is, his IT checklist to make sure his phone's set up. When Bill logs into WebDocs, he sees Matt John's file on his clipboard, so I can share documents from person to person with my clipboard. Real life example how I see this used as well is in the AP world, the auditor, he or she comes in, needs to see that 30 or 40 documents to perform that audit. What I'll do beforehand is I'll go find those 30 or 40 documents and use WebDocs, put them to my clipboard, and then give that auditor a username and password, call it auditor. So when they log in, they only see this clipboard icon on the left-hand side. They don't see the assignments or the magnifying glass or any of the reporting capabilities. All they see is this clipboard. So they can quickly perform that audit. And it just makes a copy of documents on the clipboard. If that auditor were to make a change to one of these documents, it doesn't change it in your system. It's just going to, it'll say, actually, you can't change that on the clipboard. It's not changing stuff in the database. This is still straightforward functionality. Nothing's changed from 6 to 7 in WebDocs. If I want to add documents right from within inside WebDocs, I can do that hitting my Add Documents icon here. So I can create a file here and then browse out and upload documents. Or I can, if I've got a scanner hooked up, I can hit my Scan Documents or Upload Documents. It's going to ask me to go browse out and find those documents. Now, when I hit the Scan Documents or Upload Documents option, it spits them into this indexing queue for me to go do that point-click indexing or manual indexing or matching to a template. I'm going to save reporting to the end. The reports have gotten a lot more robust inside of WebDocs. So in the past, you could always track who's viewed a document, who's edited a document, who added a document. You have those reports at your fingertips. What we've done in WebDocs 7 is we've made what we call predictive reports. So now I can run reports to see not only how many invoices are in my system, but how many invoices are in certain steps in the workflow, or how many days it's going to take to process invoice based on historical data. So I can quickly predict, where bottlenecks are in my workflow processes, or what I have out there that's pending that's going to be paid. So I'll show you that and go in a little more depth later on that. As well as forms, I'll save that. I've got a section just to talk about forms. But one of the difference between 7 and 6 in WebDocs is you can generate forms right from this icon here, as opposed to opening up a viewer and then having to generate that form. And I'll touch more on that. And then lastly here, you've got your recycling bin. One last chance to actually delete something, or you can restore it back to where it needs to be inside of WebDocs. So that's just some user interface changes that we've done in WebDocs 7. Let's get back to PowerPoint. So the other main focus we had in WebDocs was forms. Now, in the past, are any of you in the room familiar with eForms? Do you use eForms at all, or no at this point? Probably not. In the past, an eForm, so if you've got documents you're constantly making copies of, that's where you take advantage of eForms. You make those hard copies digital. They're born digitally. They never go to paper form. You can make those into electronic forms. The other example I always use is we've got a lot of folks that use WebDocs for HR purposes. They'll put an actual, what we call an external facing eForm on their website, call it an application. I want to go to apply for a job at DMI. I'm going to hit their careers link. I'm going to be presented with an application. When I fill out that application and hit submit, it's going to submit into WebDocs and maybe go down a new hire process. So you've got external facing eForms that you can use too. There's a couple different types of forms that we have now in WebDocs 7. So in the past, you've always had these structured forms. I can make, I can make an HR application. I can make an I-9 into a structured form. Why? Because they all look the same. They all have the same look and feel. They're easy to create structured forms with. What we've added in WebDocs 7 is now this new web form. So whether it be, I created some forms for an HVAC company that wanted to have their service techs fill out a form when they go perform, fix on an AC or a furnace, and they want to present the customer with something to sign off on. That's a web form. Doesn't matter what device I'm on, the web form fits to that device to make it easy to use instead of the structured form where if I pull up a structured form on an iPad, I may be doing some zooming in, zooming out, trying to pan over, find the difference. It's not intuitive. Structured forms are not intuitive. Web forms are. And I'll show you an example of both. You've got the two different types of ways to submit forms, whether it be structured or web. There's a submission piece where I can actually hit a submit button at the bottom of that form and it kicks into my WebDocs system. Or I've got just view edit form. So maybe I'm in the Matt Johns HR file. I just want to generate an I-9. That's just a view edit form. I'm not submitting that to kick down a workflow. I just want to view it, fill it out, save it back into Matt Johns' file. And I don't want to emphasize this too much, but within both these types of forms, you've got what we call regular and responsive. Again, that's where you can make it fit to whatever device you're accessing that form from. Structured form, I touched on it a little bit, and I want to kind of skip over this slide because I don't think it does a good job, but I-9s, invoices, those are all things you can make into structured forms. Those don't change. They got the same look and feel. They can be HTML forms. If you've got Excel spreadsheets or Word documents, you can make all types of e-forms. It doesn't have to just be HTML. We can actually make Word documents or PDFs into forms. So when I go look at that document, it still looks like it's in Adobe. It still looks like a PDF, but it's actually an e-form that submits into. Again, some examples. Here's an example of a structured form. Notice it's kind of hard to see that grid, but it all kind of looks and feels. You can break it up. It's very predictable. Here's an example of a health insurance claim form. You can break those up, and they all look, feel somewhat the same. Now, when we talk about web forms, what we've done in WebDocs 7 is in the past in version 6, you would have to know some sort of HTML to create e-forms. You'd have to create an external e-form with HTML. You'd have to create an internal e-form with HTML. It was messy. It took a long time. If you didn't know anything about HTML, which I don't, I could never create an e-form. I'd have to pass it to our IT department and say, hey, make this I-9 into an e-form. That's not the case anymore. We have what we call an e-form designer, where I can literally drag and drop stuff onto this designer here. If I want to put in a label and call this a work order, and then I can drag and drop text lines onto this, date fields onto this. I can drop a signature thing onto this. So in the example of my HVAC company, they want the customer to sign with their finger on their iPad. So I just drop a signature stencil onto this designer, and it creates that for me. I don't have to know that HTML to program that into the e-form. Web forms are HTML, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So again, just the different types of forms that you submit in. It's an application on a website. When I hit submit, it kicks off the workflow, and just the view edit type of forms, I-9, stuff that I'm just going to change, save, it's stored away inside a WebDoc. I'll show you this real life, but this is what we call the forms portal. So we now have a service. So when you create forms, You can save them on your own portal to access those forms. I'll skip over that because I want to show you that real life. Here's an example of just doing a view edit form. I'm inside a file. I can generate a form right from within inside the file. It's just going to be a view edit file. I'm going to fill it out, and it's going to store it inside of that file. A lot of these forms can be generated through workflow automatically. So I talked about filling out an application and hitting the submit button. Well, when I fill that application, I hit the submit button, it goes down a new hire process workflow. But it also, when I fill that application out, it generates a host of other forms that I need to hire Matt Johns. It's going to generate my IT checklist form. It's going to generate my electronic consent form. We have it in the background where we can automatically generate forms for you instead of manually having to go into my file, generate an IT checklist, generate an electronic consent. It can all be done in the background. Just a screenshot of kind of what it looks like to name those web forms. I'll show you this real life. We've got web versus structured. So I talked about that regular form not fitting to the device you're using. You know, if you're on a PC, that's the way it's going to look. If you're on an iPad, it's not going to fit on that. You're going to have to be panning around, zooming in, zooming out. Again, if you're on a smaller device, an iPhone, it's going to be even tougher to use a regular form. That's why we've come up with responsive web forms. It doesn't matter what I access this form on. It's going to fit nicely on that mobile device. The forms designer, this is what I showed you earlier where you drag and drop stuff onto that designer to create your form. Before I do that, it presents you to name your e-form. What type of form are you using? Is it going to be submission or regular? And then, submission or view edit, and then do I want it to be a regular form like an I-9, or do I want it to be responsive, something that's going to change on the device I'm using? And we also give you, before you create a form, you can start with a blank canvas to create your e-forms, but also we've got a host of templates out there, so if you want to create an emergency contact form, we've got one out there. Now you may have to modify it just a little bit to make it your own, but it gives you a good start to that e-form. And then lastly, just a couple of different options in the designer that I didn't show you. You can, and I'll show you this real life, but you can add buttons, check boxes, a spot to upload a file if I wanted to upload a resume on an external e-form. Here's just an example of some radio buttons you can put on your e-form too to check one or multiple. So let me go show you the forms in real life here. So I want to show you an example of, I'm going to use that, the example of the HVAC company that we created some forms for. So if I go to my portal, notice the URL is just your URL/portal. It's going to present you with the different types of forms that you've created. And I'll create a form for you too, but want to generate one of these forms for you first. So notice I have a couple of different forms that I've made. I want to go to this work order form. This work order in my work order project, and I've got a work order request form. So let's go back to that HVAC company. In the past, what was happening was people were calling in, somebody on the phone was answering the call, hey, what's wrong? My furnace is broke. Okay, let me get out my piece of paper, take down your information. I'm going to go walk it over to the service manager. He's going to dispatch somebody out. So what we've done using forms in the forms portal, if somebody calls in, that person on the phone will go to the portal and fill out this information on the fly. Or in the case of this organization, this form actually lives on the Matt Johns HVAC company website. So I don't have to call anymore. I go online. I can view this work order request right from the website and fill it out and not have to worry about calling somebody on the phone. So let me just walk you through an example. We've got Tim Barnes. A second. So in real life, maybe my furnace is broke. I went to Matt's HVAC website. I want to get somebody out here to fix my furnace. Put in some dummy information here. I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. Oh, AC broke. And I'm going to submit this in. Now, somebody gets notified via email that, hey, somebody has submitted a form on the website. We need to be able to dispatch somebody out to fix Tim's furnace or Tim's AC right away. So that's submitted in. Now, if I go into my WebDocs, If I go to my assignments, notice I've got a couple of work orders actually that I need to take care of down here. I've got some invoices, but I also have some work orders, and I can go just to my work orders if I select this option over here. So let's open up this work order. There's my Tim Barnes II. As the first person in line to get this form, I can go in and double check the information is right before I send it to that dispatch manager. You'll see down here this has been kicked off through a workflow. The next step in this workflow is to send it to that dispatch manager. So as that first maybe customer support person, I can say, okay, do we have all of Tim's information to be able to dispatch somebody out to see him? Looks like we've got the street address, his description, his email address, and his phone number. You'll also notice we're capturing some other information on this as far as when I submitted that form in, when I actually dispatched somebody out, and when that service is actually done. This particular organization wanted to be able to maximize the time their service reps are out in the field. So they want to see, hey, is it taking them 2 days to get to this house? Is it taking them 4 days? How long is it taking them to do the actual service? How much time before somebody calls in or somebody fills this form out to the time we dispatch somebody out? How much time are we wasting? So we're able to capture that information to maximize really everybody's time in the office. So, yep, everything looks good here. We need to send this to the dispatch manager. Somebody needs to go fix Tim's AC. Notice I'm prompted. This is a kind of a workflow check that we've added to say, hey, do we have Tim's phone number? Because a lot of times, this dispatch manager will actually have to call Tim to maybe get some more information or to see, exactly what is wrong. So, yep, we do have his information. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And just like that, it's kicked off now to the dispatch manager. Now, keep in mind, in real life here, everything's coming right back to me, so I have to log in and log out as the dispatch manager. But maybe I get notified that, hey, a customer service rep has reviewed the information. There's somebody that needs some work done. Go properly send this out to the service tech. So I can click on the file, say, okay, we've got Tim Barnes. He needs some work done on his AC. His information looks good. Where does he live? Because I need to get this out to the appropriate tech. He's at 546. Perfect. I know the perfect service tech that's in that area. I'm going to dispatch that to him. So I'm going to hit my dispatch button, and I'm presented with my service tech. I know that, Greg Smith does a great job with furnaces, but doesn't know a lick about AC. Don't know why we hired him, but I'm not going to send any AC work to Greg Smith. So I'm going to send it to the appropriate service tech in this case. Now, I want to send it right back to me, so I'm going to log in and log out these different people. But, yep, the administrator's perfect at fixing ACs. Let's send it to the administrator. Now, you'll notice I talked about the difference between view edit forms and submission forms. That first form I filled out was a submission form that kicked off this workflow. But when I dispatched this out to my service tech, it created, in the background, a work order. So here's the work order request that I had originally filled out. Notice I now have a work order. This is what the tech's going to use and present to the customer. Why? Because it created a view edit form in the background. Now, if I scroll down, I still got all the information that was originally filled out by Tim online, but you'll notice down here, now I can fill the information out that I need to as the service tech. Description of work, labor, parts, materials. I can have the customer sign down here. So let's say I go to Tim's house, I fixed his AC, and just needed a cleaning. We are not expensive. And I also needed to give a brass fitting. And the cost of that fitting was $10 for an invoice total of $60. Now, a pretty simple example here for you, but hey, Mr. Customer, I cleaned your AC. I also needed to put a brass fitting on that. Would you please sign agreeing to the work that was performed? I'm going to use the mouse for this, but this is where they could use their finger to sign that on the iPad or Android or whatever device they're using. Yep, looks good, Matt. Appreciate the work. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this work is complete. I'm sitting in my van now. I've done the work. It's going to prompt me again some different workflow. This is actually a validation stencil that we put in our workflow to say, hey, don't let Matt pass this to my accounting people to process until I have 4 pieces of information: the work order, the customer. We got to make sure I got the customer signature. I don't know if you can see that very well in the back, but it's saying, did I obtain a customer signature? I did. Did I gather a check? I'm going to say I did for purposes here. And did I attach in a receipt? You put on a brass fitting. Did you put the receipt from Home Depot on there, how much it cost for it? The work's done, looks good. I've collected all the information. I'm going to pass it on to our billing department. So you'll notice down there at the bottom now I have two options for billing. I want to send this to my accounting package, or I want to return it to the service manager if something's wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and send it to accounting. Now it's going to prompt me, hey, did you get the customer's check? Before we send this to our accounting package, we need to make sure we have that check. Now, we also had the service tech verify he had the check. Well, maybe the service tech lied and we didn't make it required. He didn't actually get that check. If I hit OK, it's not going to send it to my accounting package. It's going to keep coming right back to me and say, hey, do you have a check? I do. It's still not going to pass it because over here on the left-hand side, there's no check. So let's just add a check and pass this along in our accounting system. Let me go upload a document. I want to upload a check. Now, in real life, what would happen here is the person in accounting would call the service tech and say, hey, you said there's a check here. There's not a check. Why don't you take a picture of that check on your iPad and upload it right from your iPad out in the field so I can process this work order. So I read you loud and clear. Let me take a picture of the check. Perfect. The check is in the system now. You should be able to process it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Notice we do have a check now under Tim Barnes' file. And I can now pass this to my accounting package. So, yep, we do have a check now, and now it's on to the next step, which is waiting export into my accounting package. So, for those of you that don't use or maybe use our integration platform, WebDocs can also integrate into accounting packages to pass data to and from QuickBooks or Great Plains or whatever it may be that you're using for your accounting package, so there's no double entry. You could set it on like are you talking like a mobile? Yep. We've really put a focus on making everything mobile. As Bill mentioned, we all have iPhones, iPads. We want to not be in the office. We need to work everywhere. So we've really put an emphasis on making that as easy as possible in WebDocs to be able to do that. So that's an example of a submission e-form, creating a view edit e-form in a practical usage that is currently being used today. Now I want to show you the creation of that e-form, and then we'll take a break here. So how do I make an e-form? What you're going to do is you're going to open up your central administration. For those of you on WebDocs 6, you're probably used to the central administration being up here in the top right-hand corner. We've moved that down to the bottom left-hand corner. Why? Because most users don't access the central administration. They're not making changes to projects, or they're just using the system. They're viewing documents, passing documents along a workflow. So we put that in the bottom left-hand corner. Again, all designed to make it a more engaging experience for each end user. So let's just go ahead and create a form. I'll show you how easy it is. Let's just create I've got a webinar. I know you probably can't see, but I've got a project here called Webinars where I host or house all the people that sign up for our webinars, all their information. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go to there's an eForms node down here. And notice I'm presented with I can create a structured eForm, an I-9, or I can create a web eForm, a work order form or webinar form. So I'm going to go ahead and create a web form. Notice if I click on my library, I don't have any forms created here. So I'm going to add an eForm. It's going to ask me to log in because, again, you don't want everybody to have rights to do this. So the first thing it's going to ask me is what do I want to name this eForm? I want to call this the webinar registration form. What type of form is it? Is it a submission form or a view edit form? I want this to be a submission form because I want people to get an email on their mobile device and say, hey, sign up for this webinar, and have them fill that information out and submit it in so I'm notified when they're registered for that webinar. Now, what sort of layout? Again, people are going to be viewing this invitation on their mobile devices, so let's make it a responsive form. Here's where I talked about the different templates we can use. If I've got something here that looks like it might work that I just need to modify, I can start right from here. In this case, let's just do a blank form. Now, here's where it gets really cool. Here's where I can just drag and drop stuff onto my forms designer, and it's going to create that HTML in the background. I don't have to know anything about HTML. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a label on this form. I'll drag the label icon over, and we're going to call this the webinar registration. And I'm done. I'm going to go back to my toolbox. What else do I want to put on this form? Well, let's put a let's put a checkbox on here. And I want to put a couple options. I will attend, and I'm going to add another radio box that I will not attend. I'll probably make this checkbox tiny, tiny. Save it. So as easy as that, I'm able to add checkboxes, links to upload files, whatever I want to do. Here's where I can put my signature block, drag and drop the signature block. So if I want, in the example of that HVAC company is to collect the signature, I just do that now. In the past, if you guys aren't familiar with eForms, it was kind of labor intensive to put a signature box on an eForm. It required knowledge of HTML, Java, stuff like that. No longer it's drag and drop. And I'm just going to leave it at that. The last thing I'm going to put on here is a button to be able to submit this in. So I'm going to drag a button on here, and I can have it be a save button, print button, reset button, whatever it may be. I'm just going to leave it at save. Now, if I want to actually see the HTML that was produced in the background, this is what you would have to do in the past to create this eForm. I'd have to open up, here's what that would look like to create this eForm. I would never be able to do this. People would spend a lot of time doing this to make that eForm look the way it does, but that's no longer drag and drop. You're on your way. I can preview this. Let's see what that form is going to look like on my website. And lastly, just some options in the form. So here's where I can add properties to this form. So when I submit this form, what do I want it to do? Do I want it to go down a workflow? Typically you do. But just some options here on this eForm. Probably the most important option is you've got this portal option here. Here's where I can just select that box to add it to my portal. So if I add this to my portal, I can now access it much like I did when I generated that work order. So I'm going to make it public. I can add security around these forms and secure by an access code or a login. But I'm going to add it to my portal and hit my save button. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this webinar registration form. Now, what you're seeing here is a prompt that says, Matt, you don't have any of these mapped index fields inside of WebDocs. I don't care. For this purpose, I'm not going to map those fields. Now, if I go back to my portal here, in fact, I think I have it saved. I've got a link to my portal saved. Here's my webinars project. Notice it now has my webinar registration form, so I can access this online now. That's what it looks like. So if you're not using forms, it's easy to use forms. I suggest with WebDocs, this is one easy thing that you can add to make a lot of your processes much more efficient without having to know anything about HTML or have to waste time creating eForms. It's a little bit about mobile devices. We've got a lot of organizations that use WebDocs, whether they be service techs that are out in the field, whether they be home healthcare people that go out and need to fill out information on the road. That's one of the main focuses of WebDocs now, is to be able to make that as easy as possible for people on the road. Not only that, as far as filling out forms on the road, but just viewing documents and passing documents along on the road. I've gotten emails while I've been doing this, I'm sure, from WebDocs saying, hey, there's been something passed to you, Matt, go view this. I'm sure, Bill's been flooding my inbox with stuff that I need to look at in the back there. So, but once I get off of here, I'll get on my email, go click on a link to view that document inside of WebDocs, and perform the action I need to, approve it, deny it, whatever I need to do. It all can be done from a mobile device. Some stuff that you all probably already know. Everybody has a mobile device. We need to focus on making that available to them. There's nothing else is needed. If you have WebDocs, you can access your documents on your mobile device. There's no additional costs or fees. We've created a mobile interface, so whether I'm accessing WebDocs from my iPhone, an iPad, an Android, it's all going to display a much more user-friendly interface where I don't have to zoom in, zoom out, scroll through stuff. It's really slick. We've got an app available for both Androids and Apples now. So if you download the app, it gives you some additional functionality as far as being able to save emails from your phone directly from your phone, into WebDocs from your phone. We've created actually too and I don't know if you're familiar, if you use WebDocs now, there's actually a touch browser. So I can, I'll show you that actually right now. I can actually, there's a mobile part of WebDocs now that I don't have to use my phone to access. So if I go into, if I go into WebDocs here, you'll notice I can view, and I know it's tough to see because it's not a bold color here, but I've got my classic view or I've got my touch view, and this is much like the mobile interface inside of WebDocs. So if I log in now in the touch view, notice bigger icons, just more friendlier for touch devices and mobile devices. So I'm not scrolling around in the interface doing that. So we also have a touch interface inside of WebDocs. And if you have WebDocs, you have this touch interface right now. It's just on that login screen, a different option to select. When I work inside of WebDocs, I oftentimes just use this touch interface and not the regular interface, just because I like the look and feel of this touch interface a little bit more than the classic view.
And how much does the iOS and the Android client cost?
Free.
Oh.
Thanks for teeing that up, Ben. Absolutely free. Purchase now, get 2 of them, and a steak knife set. So, yeah, it's all free. Everything I talk about mobile inside of WebDocs, you have WebDocs, you have all of this already. Let's see here. Touch browser, and then smartphone interface may be integrated with WebDocs 7 Forms. I talked about forms and how you can do those forms on your mobile device. Here. Again, Android, iPhone, WebDocs is integrated with each, kind of just to give you an idea of what they look on each, how it displays on a phone versus a touch screen. Kind of tough to see. I'll show you that here. So kind of brushed over the mobile. It's fairly self-explanatory. Everything on your WebDocs system is now on your phone as far as viewing, passing documents along. Some workflow enhancements. So the forms was a big focus, user interface engagement was a focus, and workflow was a focus. So we've added not a whole lot of workflow features, but ones that really make sense and make processes easier for everyday users. So here's what, you folks don't use workflow out here, and I mentioned if you don't use workflow, you need to get workflow because this is the tool that sets WebDocs apart from a lot of the other people that are out there. It's the workflow utility. So again, much like the forms designer, you have a blank canvas over here, and our workflow is a matter of dragging and dropping different stencils onto this workflow, assigning users or groups or decisions to those stencils, and then you just connect the dots, and you're on your way. So, just a few different types of stencils. Right here, we've got some assignment stencils. I want to assign this to Bill. I want to assign this to Mary. These are kind of flexible assignment stencils. We've got automatic decision-making stencils, whether it be, hey, this invoice is above $10,000. Send it to the CFO for secondary approval. Skip over Mary's role and go right to the CFO, and it does that automatic. It's automatic decision making. Or you'll notice there's a handful of them here. %. Make sure that 8 out of 10 people approve this before I send it to the next step. We've got systematic actions. These are things that just happen in the background that, much like the automatic decision making, you don't see. So just an example of some systematic actions. When I approve an invoice, I'm going to drag and drop this email stencil between maybe these 2 steps. So I approve an invoice. I also want to email that invoice or a notification to Bill that an invoice has been approved. So it'll just go through that workflow. It won't stop on that step. It's just going to automatically send an email out. Another example would be this. I know you can't see these. Trust me, this is an e-form stencil. I'll put an e-form stencil when I submit my application in and it goes down that new hire workflow. This is where it hits this e-form stencil, and it'll generate those other 4 e-forms that I need inside of WebDocs to hire Matt John. And then we've got some workflow step details. I'm going to brush over that. That's a little more advanced, but you can see, you can kind of dive into the logistics of the workflow. So just some different things that we've done inside of WebDocs to the workflow besides some stencils. We have an enhanced simulator interface. So I know you folks don't use workflow here. For those of you that use workflow on the phone, we've always had a simulator. So if I build a workflow and I publish it, I don't want to have to actually go out to my website, fill out a form, see if it's being passed to Mary, shout down the hall, Bill, did you get this? Did you get that document? I want to just be able to do that myself to make sure it's working, so I don't have to waste time actually going down that workflow to make sure it's working. So we have a simulator where once you create your workflow, you hit our simulator button, you can drag a document on, and notice here it's tough to see, but it's you can just basically walk down that workflow right from your PC to make sure it's working, make sure the appropriate people are getting those, make sure the emails are going out, and double check everything right from the simulator instead of having to do it real life and make a change and do it again real life and make sure it's working. We've got a duplicate file check option now. So this was something that was WebDocs had gotten a lot of requests for. Hey, how do I know if I've got a duplicate invoice? Well, we could set that up in the past, but it was more of a manual process. We now have a stencil in the workflow that's just a duplicate file check. Does this file already exist inside of WebDocs? It does. Notify somebody or delete it. Whatever you want it to do, it can check that for that duplicate file. Undo, redo in the designer. In the past, we never had the undo, redo, which is always nice. If you're like me and always making mistakes, you just hit the undo, redo option instead of having to. In the past, you'd have to manually go back and redo that step. Very simple enhancement, but something that's very useful as well. You also have the ability to leverage PowerShell. I'm not a PowerShell expert. I don't know if any of you folks on the phone or out here are either, but you have the ability now to not only do VB scripting inside of the workflow, but PowerShell as well. You can see workflow step information as it hits a workflow. I'm kind of brushing over these two fairly quickly. They're pretty for advanced workflow users. But these across the bottom, again, are simple functions that we've added in our workflow process designer with WebDocs that are very, very, very useful. The stamp action. I pass an invoice along. I want it to place a stamp automatically on that invoice in the workflow. I don't want to have to go to my annotations, drag and drop my stamp onto that invoice. I just want it to do it in the background. So it's going to hit this stencil called stamp action and place the appropriate stamp on that document. And I can configure the stamp action button to place my stamp on certain spots on this invoice in this case. Very configurable stamp action button. Secure action, again, folks would say, Matt, I've got a client file. When I pass this on to Mary down the hall, I want Mary to see, but I don't want Mary to be able to edit this at all. Well, before it hits Mary's desk, it's going to hit this secure action stencil and lock that document down. So Mary can't make any changes to this document. She can view it, but cannot make any changes to it. And then the validation stencil. This stencil is actually used in that HVAC example I gave, where before an accounting, before I send that to my accounting package, it hit this validation stencil to say, do I have a work order? Do I have a work order request? And do I have a check? Well, I never had that check, so it was looping right back to me every time saying, nope, put a check in before I can pass it to my accounting system. So a validation stencil to make sure that those 30, 40, 4, 5 documents are in the workflow before I pass it along. Leveraging a lot of the stuff that we've built in the new WebDocs designer. Here's what an example of this is an actual real life workflow that somebody had set up using our old processes. Notice these are decision steps that's saying, do I have this? Nope. Go here. If I do, go here. Pretty messy. Well, now we can leverage some of the custom actions and stencils that we've created in WebDocs 7. Notice, I know it's hard to see and you probably can't read it, but we've got a VB script option where I can basically eliminate all these decision steps and write some VB script here to make that one stencil. And that's something that, the folks at DMI, that we get this, maximize your workflows using our new stencils. I'll walk you down a quick workflow. I kind of touched on a workflow with that HVAC example I used and some of the validation steps. I'm just going to walk you through a real simple invoice approval workflow. So I'm going to get back into my WebDocs here. I'm going to log out. I want to go into the classic view for this. And let me log in. And I'm going to do a search on an invoice here. Select my AP invoice project. I'm going to do a wildcard search. And I'm going to open up an Express Electronics invoice. Now, to my example, I always want to see my invoice or my vendor first. There we go. And let me open up one of these in the viewer. One thing I didn't touch on earlier, but for you folks that already have WebDocs, the viewer is changed a little bit. So again, in WebDocs version 6, you would have probably 20 icons up here to perform your work. Well, that's all condensed now. We've categorized it, in one of these different types of options up here as far as annotations, being able to email documents out. Notice if I want to email this out, it's now under this icon that basically says I'm pushing information out of WebDocs. So no more dancing icons, no more clutter. It may take a little getting used to up front, but once you know where everything's located, it's just a much cleaner interface. So I'm going to go ahead and I just want to manually route this document. Now, typically I have it set up so when this document hits my WebDocs system, it automatically goes down a workflow. I'm going to show you the manual way of routing this. Notice I can select the workflow I want to route this down. Let's just send it down a my simple workflow. I can add notes. Notice document routed successfully. And this is on to the first step in the workflow. In this case, it's on to my AP clerk. Again, AP clerk can review the information, make sure it's been all filled out correctly. I'm going to go ahead and approve this. Enter notes again if I want to. On to the next person. So you can quickly see how this eliminates walking from desk to desk to be able to do any of this, whether it be in AP, HR, whatever it may be. Now, one thing that has always been in WebDocs that I just want to touch on is our related documents. So whether it be an invoice or a purchase order or a packing slip, I've got projects set up for each one of these. So when I upload documents, I select that project and start uploading these documents. Well, maybe I want to see everything that's related to this invoice. Or in the case of an HR file, I've got Matt's, I-9 open, but I want to see everything else that I've got in my WebDocs system that's related to Matt. Well, I've got this related docs down here where hopefully you can see that, but it's small, but I can see, indeed, I do have a packing slip related to this invoice. I have a check. I've already paid this invoice and scanned my check back in, and I've also got my purchase order that's related to this invoice. So we can relate documents across projects inside of WebDocs. I use the automotive industry as an example. I've worked with a lot of people that use WebDocs to scan in those mechanics repair orders. Well, I can go view a repair order, but I can also, in my related docs, say, okay, I see that Matt Johns had some work performed on his Lamborghini. I want to see, the papers that he filled out to buy this Lamborghini. Well, down in related docs, I would have a thing down here called my deal jacket where I could go back and see those 50 documents that I filled out signing my life away for that Lamborghini. Let's go back to the workflow here. And as the sales manager now, I'm going to approve this, add any notes if I want to. On to the next step. In this case, it's on to the CFO. Now, what you didn't see in the background is it hit that one of those decision stencils that said, is this pay amount over a certain amount? And I think I had it set up for $5,000. It was over $5,000. Well, you can see the pay amounts for $17,000. So instead of going to my export step to export it into QuickBooks or whatever you may have, I went to the CFO for secondary approval. So as a CFO, I'll review it. Everything looks good. I'm going to hit my export step. And I am going to save that. Now it's sitting waiting for export into my accounting system. So you'll see there that step at the bottom, waiting export to accounting. So everything that's sitting on the step is going to get swept on a scheduled basis using our WebDocs integration platform to pass into, in this case, an accounting package. Now, I will open up again the central administration just to show you what that workflow designer looks like. If I want to create a new workflow in my AP invoice project, I'm going to go to my workflow processes. Notice I've got 4 of them already that I've designed, but let's just make another one real quick. It's going to ask me to name this. It's going to be my DMI workflow, AP workflow. And it's going to launch my workflow designer. Again, it looks a lot like the forms designer. Drag and drop steps onto my designer, connect the dots, and I'm on my way. So this is going to go to the AP clerk. I am going to, once the AP clerk approves it, I'm going to notify somebody with this email, and it's going to go down to my CFO. And at the end, I want to convert all these documents using this convert stencil to PDFs, and then I'm going to end my process. So again, this is a very, very simple workflow I'm building here, but you see the functionality here, but behind the designer, I'm just now connecting my dots, and I've never been coordinated without a mouse, so bear with me here. And as easy as that, I've built my workflow. Convert, and I'm going to end the process once it converts it. Now, the last piece I have to do now that I have my workflow laid out is just assign users to these steps. So I'm going to double click on these steps, and here's where I've got a host of information I can do, but here's where I would assign it to user up here. We can do some neat things as far as escalations. Maybe Matt's out of the office. I want to send it to Bill if Matt's out of the office. If Matt doesn't do anything with this invoice for 2 days, send him an email. Say, hey, what are you doing over there, Matt? Go approve this, reject it, do what you got to do, or automatically pass it to somebody else because Matt's not doing his job. And I'm not going to dive a lot into these options, but a lot of different options under each step you can do in the workflow. So much like the forms designer, drag and drop, you're on your way. I created a workflow in under 3 minutes there. And then I would just hit my publish, and this workflow would be readily available for me to use. So up here, you'll notice I have a simulator tab. Here's where I bring in a sample invoice to run through the simulator. Wilkins. I think I've got some invoices out there from Wilkins. I think I misspelled Wilkins. I'm just going to bring in an invoice to make sure this workflow is working the way it should. Let's bring in that, and I'm going to hit my finish here. Now I can pause it at each one of these steps to make sure it's working right. So it stops at each step. It gives me a nice visual of what that user is going to be presented with at that step. Now I can't guarantee this is going to work because I didn't actually assign these to any users, but I could hit my start button here, and it would work through this simulator. Now I didn't assign any of these steps to anybody, so it doesn't know what to do, but here's where I could just walk through each step to make sure it's working right. And as I walk through each step, I would be presented with a screen that looks, it's small, but it would look like this where it stops and it says, hey, here's the options once it hits this step that the end user is going to see. Analytics and reporting. So I talked about how you could always track when documents are being brought into WebDocs, whether it be who's adding documents, who made a change to a document. That functionality is still in WebDocs, but we've added some enhanced features as far as being able to graphically show what's been going on inside of WebDocs, workflow history. Who's using what workflows and what workflows are being utilized more often than others. Well, and again, I know it's tough for you folks in the back to read, but here's my workflow processes that I have in my AP invoice project. Notice I had about 4 drop downs. Here's where it's saying, hey, Matt, everybody's using the simple workflow. So I know I need to maintain this workflow and keep it up to speed because it's being used, 90% of the time. It's telling me how many documents are being passed down each workflow per day, as well as just some averages as far as times per step. How long is the AP clerk taking to process that? How long is the sales manager taking to process that? So forth and so on. So I can accurately predict how long it's taking each step to complete. And I apologize, I know these are a little scrunched and hard to read, but it's just, again, some more graphical information on some file activity, who's touching what document. This is actually displaying the system usage reports, what's going on with these documents. So if I were to hover over any one of these, and I can't because it's on a PowerPoint, I'll show you this real life, but it's going to break down each step as far as how many documents are being passed through the AP clerk, how many documents are actually being passed through the sales manager, stuff like that. So let me open up some of these reports and show you. Let me log in here. I'll log in as a guest in this case. And if I go to my reports icon here, notice I still have my audit reports. I can still run a report to see who's viewed a document, but I now have this option up here called Dashboard. This is where we really get into that intelligent reporting. I wish I could make my screen a little bigger, but it tells me 62% of the documents that are entering my system are going down, in this case, the AP approval workflow. And that's roughly 3,600 documents a day. I've got a lot of invoices going down this AP approval workflow. I need to be able to maintain this. So if I hover over this, it's going to tell me average number of days to complete certain steps. In this case, phase one, that approval step, it's taking an average of 4 days to complete that. The pay step, it's taking an average approval of no days to complete this. So it's getting paid right away, which is good. But I can see there's definitely some bottlenecks in my approving steps. My AP clerk and my sales manager and HR managers are taking on average 4 days to complete these invoices. And I can switch projects up here to see, in my HR applications project, my new hire process, what are some stats and figures to make sure that I'm hiring somebody on time. Now, I haven't ran any applications down this, but as I continue to get applications for employment, I can run these intuitive reports to say, hey, it's taken 12 days to even get Matt Johns interviewed for the first time. So I can run reports based on any project I have inside of WebDocs. So I'm going to go back to my AP invoices because this is something I use often, and we're running a lot of invoices down this project. Notice this is just one report seeing how many documents have went down my AP approval workflow. If I wanted to check to see, another workflow, how many documents are going down, and it tells me that. Now, this is just a one-phase workflow. This is that export to accounting system. 99.2% of the documents on this step are being exported successfully. So there's 27 documents now sitting on this ready to export step. Average number of days to complete this, 2. Now, this is probably a case where this organization, in this example, is manually exporting that. What most folks do is just have this running on a scheduled basis. So an average number of days is probably almost always 1 because they run it on a nightly basis. So that's just one of the kind of predictive analysis reports. Notice if I hit this drop-down menu up top, again, I know it's hard to see, but I've got a host of different types of intuitive reports I can run, whether it be predictive analysis or let's just do a performance comparison report. I can see my invoices. In this case, I'm looking at my invoices project per vendor per sum of the invoice total for the previous. So I can see as I hover over these per vendor how much I'm paying over the last quarter. Now notice down here I've got my log of my different vendors down here. And this, I know the screen resolution is a little small, so it's not fitting on the screen, but I can hover over any one of these steps to see how much I'm paying each vendor in a given quarter in this case. And then just some workflow benchmarks as far as how long it's taking, in this case, me to process the stuff down my AP approval process. You'll notice here it's taking an average of 1.52 days for everything to get through this process. So I don't want to dive a lot into these intuitive reports. It's very, for you on the phone or for you out there, focus on workflow, search, retrieve, and the e-forms. Reporting analytics is great. Managers want to see this stuff, but I don't want to confuse you by diving into a lot of this stuff. But as far as predicting and being able to report on trends inside of WebDocs, you now have that capability to do that. And we can always follow up with you at a later date to actually dive into your processes to see what makes sense for you as far as doing any of these predictive analysis reports.
That was great. So what do you think? You see some stuff in there that was interesting to you? So what I have to take you through now is, especially folks who are familiar with how WebDocs was sold in the past, we've added a new, most of you know we have two different levels of subscription to WebDocs. We have our basic level, and then we have our level that adds workflow and e-forms. And you either were basic, or if you needed workflow and e-forms, you turned them on, and you went from basically, tier A to tier B. Well, what we've done with version 7 is we've actually added a third tier. And if you folks who are here who have your packets, you actually have this grid. You're not going to be able to read it up here. You have this grid in your packet that shows you what features and functionality are available in the different versions. So the document management, or what we're calling DM, was your basic level before. That's kind of where everybody was. Workflow added in the workflow functionality in the e-forms. That was our only other option before. Now we actually have two upgrades from the basic level, workflow and e-forms like we always have, and then what we're calling enterprise. Enterprise is for organizations that are really looking to maximize the automation capabilities in WebDocs version 7. What you find in here is a lot of automated stuff, automated document import, automated email import, where we can sit and monitor an email address and bring that stuff in automatically. We can do the same thing with social media, so we can monitor some social media accounts, bring that stuff into WebDocs automatically. Of course, the forms designer and the forms portal, that's new functionality that we've added to the enterprise level, the responsive web forms, etc., and the analytic dashboard that Matt was just showing you, where we can report on the cycle times in your workflows, do some predictive analysis about what's going to happen based on historical trends, etc., is all at our what we're calling our enterprise level. So let's take a look at the pricing, and this is the first time we've had to do this. There's no conspiracy theory or anything. Your eyes aren't going bad. The pricing is blurred out. And the reason the pricing is blurred out is because we have different folks that buy off of different mechanisms. We've got retail folks. We've got WebDocs is now available on state contracts. So if you are a state of Delaware agency, you can purchase WebDocs directly without having to bid or anything like that. So there's a little bit different pricing for each of those groups. So I didn't want to confuse anybody. But I want to explain the model of how WebDocs is sold. And most of you know that WebDocs is sold by volume. And the volume is based on how many documents you have in the system at any given time. The nice thing about WebDocs is WebDocs is always sold with unlimited concurrent users. This means that you can put everybody and their brother who needs to access the documents in WebDocs on the system, no extra cost. You want to put 1,000 users on WebDocs, we're all for that. Our philosophy is anybody that needs to interact with the documents that are stored in WebDocs should be able to get to them. We don't want you having to make a value judgment. Well, John doesn't use the system that often. Maybe we shouldn't give him a license. If he needs to get at something, let him go in and self-service himself. There's no extra cost for that. And at the same token, if you want to let your customers come in and access their own documents in the system, you can do that, no extra cost. If you want to let employees come in, access their records in the system, no extra cost for that. If you want to let vendors come in, access their own records, why not? Right? Why field calls and have to find the stuff for them and copy it, fax it, email it to them, whatever. Right? Just let them come in and self-service themselves. WebDocs is basically sold on like a utility model, so it is a monthly bill, and it's again just based on how many documents are in the system. You're going to pay a monthly rate based on how many documents and what level of service you want, whether you just want document management, whether you want document management with the workflow functionality, or whether you want the full gamut of enterprise functionality with the web, with the forms portal and the analytics and the automation, etc. I will tell you that a number I don't mind throwing out is down here in the lower left-hand corner at your lowest level. You're looking at around, depending on what organization you are, around $300 a month for unlimited users. So we talked about very affordable before. You can't buy a good server for $300 a month. I mean, really. And this is unlimited users, 5 nines uptime guarantee. All your data is backed up. We have help desk tech support for you, etc. If you are interested in finding out, kind of where you think you might be based on your volume and what features and functions you need, please send me an email, give us a call, talk to your rep, and we will get you the pricing that you need. So we're not trying to be secretive or anything like that. We just don't want to confuse folks. Yes. Right. So if you want to start at document management and just start capturing your documents electronically, scanning in, etc., and then move up to workflow at some point in the future when you're ready, you absolutely can do that. And then if you want to add the enterprise functionality to build in some of that automation that that level gives you, then you can upgrade to that at any point. Everybody wants to know, geez, Bill, that's great. How do I get WebDocs version 7? A couple slides on that real quick, then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So if you are a current V6 customer, you are going to be upgraded to version 7 automatically at no cost. What we will do is we will give you at least a 2-week lead time before we upgrade your account to version 7. We'll let you know when it's going to be. It'll be during our maintenance window on Sunday, early Sunday morning. Hopefully nobody will be in the system at that point. If you're working Sunday morning at 4 a.m., well, you probably need a vacation. Current workflow customers, as a thank you, if you are using V6 workflow right now, we are going to give you enterprise level functionality for free for the life of your account. Because I don't know if you're on a workflow or not, but I will find out. Yeah, I don't know what level your subscription is, but I'll find out. If you are not currently a workflow customer, if you upgrade your account to a workflow account by September 30th, we will turn on the enterprise features of version 7 for your account at no cost for the life of your account. And this year, yes. Not next year. And the reason we're doing that is because we think that the enterprise features are valuable, and we want you to have them, and we want you to make use of them. So we're basically saying, look, if you turn on workflow, and now some of the enterprise features are very tied to workflow. I think you can see that. So they kind of don't do anything without workflow. For example, the reporting, the analytics, the business intelligence needs the workflow processes. That's where the data comes from. They kind of can't have one without the other. If you are still a V4, V5 holdout, okay, it is time to finally upgrade your WebDocs account. You're going to get better performance. You're going to get better feature functionality, better mobile support, the workflow, the whole 9 yards. We are going to upgrade you directly to V7. You do not have to go to V6 first. It will be scheduled because there's some pretty heavy-duty professional services involved. So this isn't an automatic thing where we can just flip a switch. There is a cost to upgrade to V7. It's a one-time charge of $2,800. But then we are going to credit you back the $2,800 towards implementing workflow in your organization to help automate some of your manual business processes. If you turn on workflow by September 30th, we will also give you the enterprise functionality for free as a way of saying thank you for being a long-term. If you're on V4 still, you're a long-term WebDocs customer because V4 ended, about 6 years ago, okay? So we thank you, but it's time to upgrade, all right? Now, if you are not a current WebDocs customer, what are we going to do for you? Well, WebDocs version 7 is available right now. Any new customers are going to go directly into V7. There's nothing you have to do. If you commit to doing a trial of WebDocs, which is no cost, no obligation, by the end of the month, and you sign up for a workflow account, we will give you the enterprise features at no cost. So basically what we're saying is, Yes, there's now 3 tiers of WebDocs product: document management, workflow, and enterprise. Get in now. Everybody gets enterprise at the workflow price. After September 30, all bets are off, though. Also, if you are a new customer, we will scan up to 25,000 pages of your documents into WebDocs for free to help kind of kickstart things. Obviously, there's no point in doing workflow if there's no documents in the system. We understand that. So we will help you start to get your stuff into the system for you at no cost. There is a one-time $2,000 startup fee for new WebDocs customers. That's actually always been in place. And we will credit that back to you in the form of workflow professional services to help you get your workflow up and running, okay, so that you can get the enterprise level features at no cost. Questions? I know we had a couple web questions, so, and Matt, you might have to help me.
Yeah, sure.
Here. Yeah, can you? So we had one question about getting questions texted to me. What's the question, Eric, about somebody asked if a file is viewed, okay, using a mobile device, and then it's closed, does anything remain on the mobile device?
No, once you close something on your mobile device, it closes that browser in that section. So nothing as far as being cached or
there's no remnants of that document that
no,
remain on that device.
You're still accessing that document through the web on your mobile device. So as far as on the mobile device, nothing remains.
Okay, good. So the short answer is nothing remains. I'm sure there's a bunch of technical reasons behind that, but hopefully that suffices. And actually, what I'm going to do is flip over to the, if I can find it. Yeah, where does it go, John? Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. Yes, yes. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, yeah.
In the beginning, we were showing the HR stuff, and they had Social Security numbers. Looked like they were entered by different people. Some had the dashes, others ran in. Can you format that?
Yes, you can. So and that's part of administration setup. So the question is, can you format fields to adhere to a certain format of the data? So for example, Social Security number, you could tell the system, look, this must be of a format, number, dash, number, and regardless of how they enter it, you can go ahead and try to force it to adhere to that format. So yeah, absolutely.
Format, will we have to manually put the data in every time we scan something?
We have to manually put the data in every time you scan something. Well, I guess it depends on what exactly you're scanning. So the indexing queue that Matt showed you, where we could drag the pages around and create new documents, etc., we can actually do OCR on those documents in the background after they've been uploaded. And if we give the system a template that it recognizes, then it will go ahead and index that document and file it automatically. Okay. So the question is, we'd have to see kind of exactly what you're scanning, and if it's something that is consistent enough that it can be matched to that template. So that's, I'm not trying to be a politician and not answer the question, but if the answer is it depends. But in 7, we've got more capability than we've ever had to automatically be able to file documents without having to interact or enter anything from them.
Every Monday, I print our accounts in the cold.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what that's all about. I just sort of inherited that, and I don't really.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's because we're doing backups, offline backups for you. So in other words, the data in WebDocs, and this is probably good for folks online who are not WebDocs customers, or even if you are, the data in WebDocs is backed up for you. That's part of the service. Okay. Some folks also prefer to have, let's call it an offline backup. So what we will do as a service is we'll create CD or DVD on some schedule. Could be weekly, could be monthly, it could be quarterly, whatever, where we take the data and deliver it to you. And that way, if the whole internet goes down, right, you still have copies of your data. And you can do that yourself also. So it's very easy to, right from within WebDocs, create a CD or a DVD that's got documents on there, got the images, etc. It's just that's just something that you've, asked us to do as a service for you, which we're happy to do. Okay. Anything else? Great. All right. Well, appreciate everybody's time. Let's see if we've got any other web questions. Okay. Doesn't look like it. Great. So we do have, if everybody takes off their name tags, thank you to everyone who's online. We will go ahead and make this recording available. Probably take a day or two to get it up there. And I will also send out a link to these release notes. So if there's anybody that you think would like to see a copy of these release notes, it's a PDF. So you'll all get a link to the video from today, supposing it all worked right. And you'll also get a link to this document that you have in front of you that you'll be able to download, share with anybody, whatever. And thanks, everybody online. We're going to go ahead and sign off, and appreciate your time. There's one other question came in. Yeah, version 7 is available now, and for current customers, yes, you will be upgraded to version 7 for free. If you are a workflow customer, you will get the enterprise functionality for free. If you are not a workflow customer, if you upgrade to workflow before September 30th, we will upgrade you to the enterprise functionality for free. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Got it. Great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end the web meeting, and then we'll do our little drawing here. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your support of WebDocs, and we'll be talking to you real soon.